James Comey embarrassed today as Joe Biden rejects his endorsement. And more bad news for Joe Biden as the Senate panel prepares to issue the first subpoenas in the Biden-Burisma investigation. Former FBI Director James Comey is probably not very happy today after he was mocked by a Biden campaign official who rejected his endorsement of Joe Biden. An interesting reaction from the Biden campaign, given the fact that James Comey is currently under investigation by federal prosecutors over classified data leaks. Notably, in January of this year, the New York Times was among the mainstream media outlets panicking over this current investigation into James Comey for these media leaks, accusing law enforcement officials of politicizing their work. Zero Hedge article today on the Biden campaign rejecting James Comey's endorsement expands further on some of the possible reasons behind this. Article opens saying, confirming the renewed prosecutorial scrutiny against James Comey and his tenure at the head of the FBI has made him intolerably toxic. The Biden campaign has reportedly issued a statement rejecting Comey's endorsement. Biden campaign Rapid Response Director Andrew Bates appeared to reject Comey's endorsement, joking that he had received a package he didn't want. So here's the initial tweet from James Comey today, where Comey says, voted in first Democrat primary to support party dedicated to restoring values in White House. I agree with Amy Klobuchar. We need candidate who cares about all Americans and will restore decency, dignity to the office. There is a reason Trump fears Joe Biden and roots for Bernie. Then Andrew Bates from the Biden campaign responds saying, yes, customer service, I just received a package that I very much did not order. How can I return it free of charge? In part, this reaction from the Biden campaign seems like a further attempt to push the DNC and mainstream Democrat narrative that blames Comey for President Trump's victory over Clinton. But could it also be possible that Biden or some in his campaign could know more about the ongoing DOJ investigation against Comey? That Zero Hedge article concludes saying, and with federal agents looking into Comey's behavior back when Biden was his boss, wouldn't it be hilarious if the investigation of Comey has some kind of negative last-minute impact on the election? Meanwhile, the mainstream media is continuing to panic over the escalating investigations into the Biden family. Vanity Fair with the headline, Republicans are suddenly interested in Hunter Biden again. Wall Street Journal also reporting last night that Senate Homeland Security Panel Chairman wants to issue a subpoena in the Hunter Biden probe. Article opens saying a top Senate Republican said he intends to issue a subpoena as part of his committee's probe into the work that former Vice President Joe Biden's son did for a Ukrainian natural gas company, escalating Republican efforts to put a spotlight on a leading Democrat presidential candidate. Senator Ron Johnson, the chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, wrote in a letter Sunday that he wants to subpoena Andrei Teleshenko, a former Ukrainian diplomatic aide who worked for Blue Star Strategies, a Washington-based consulting firm. Mr. Johnson said he would schedule a committee meeting soon to vote on the subpoena. The letter from Senator Johnson explained how, quote, Blue Star, a U.S.-based government and public affairs firm founded by Karen Tramontano, former deputy chief of staff to President Clinton, and Sally Painter, a former senior advisor for the Clinton administration, was a U.S. representative for a Ukrainian gas company, Burisma Holdings. Mr. Johnson's committee is one of several in the Republican-led Senate that is investigating Hunter Biden's service on the board of Burisma Holdings, a Ukrainian natural gas company, while his father was vice president and leading international anti-corruption efforts in Ukraine. Mr. Johnson wants documents from Mr. Teleshenko and an interview with him about his time working for Blue Star Strategies, a consulting firm hired by Burisma Holdings, while Hunter Biden served on its board. Mr. Teleshenko, who has already turned over some material, has told the committee that he would share certain documents only if he received a subpoena, according to Mr. Johnson's letter. Mr. Johnson wrote in his letter that Blue Star had insufficiently responded to its request last year for information, which he now seeks to obtain from Mr. Teleshenko. Blue Star mentioned Hunter Biden's name in emails to a State Department official as it sought to improve Burisma's image in Washington. Blue Star did not respond to a request for comment. An attorney for Hunter Biden did not respond to a request for comment. Joe Biden's campaign declined to comment. Another article back from November of last year mentions these emails showing the firm hired by Ukraine's Burisma tried to use Hunter Biden's name as leverage. A consulting firm hired by Burisma Group mentioned that former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden's son served on the Ukrainian gas company's board, so the firm could leverage a meeting with the State Department, according to documents and a former U.S. official. The documents, email exchanges between State Department staff members made public, show that the consulting firm, Washington-based Blue Star Strategies, used Hunter Biden's name in a request for a State Department meeting and then mentioned him again during the meeting as part of an effort to improve Burisma's image in Washington. This article from The Hill adds more. Headline: GOP chairman plans first subpoena in Burisma Biden probe. Quote, as part of the committee's ongoing investigation, it has received U.S. government records indicating that Blue Star sought to leverage Hunter Biden's role as a board member of Burisma to gain access to and potentially influence matters at the State Department, Johnson wrote in the letter to committee members. Senator Gary Peters, the top Democrat on the committee, has notified Johnson that he objects to issuing the subpoena over concerns that it could bolster Russian disinformation efforts. Without Peters' support, Johnson will need a simple majority of the GOP-controlled panel to vote to issue the subpoena. They add that if Johnson is successful, it would mark the first subpoena to come out of the months-long Republican investigation into Burisma and Hunter Biden. It would also escalate what has been a probe that so far has largely been limited to letters and some document production. Again, this investigation into the Bidens has been steadily growing. Mentioned last month how Republicans were seeking Hunter Biden's travel records from the Secret Service, not only including the records on Hunter Biden's trips to Ukraine, but other countries like China as well. Article from The Hill also notes that tensions have flared more recently after a top Senate Democrat disclosed that the Treasury Department had handed over documents pertaining to Johnson and Senator Chuck Grassley's wide-ranging investigation, which includes Hunter Biden and Burisma. Republicans criticized the disclosure as a leak meant to undermine their investigation. A spokeswoman for Senator Ron Wyden, the top Democrat on the Finance Committee, did not disclose what was in the documents handed over by the Treasury Department. A spokesman for Grassley said last week that they had also received State Department documents. One more quote from Senator Johnson's letter says, although Mr. Teleshenko expressed his willingness to cooperate fully with our investigation, he identified a limited subset of relevant records from his work with Blue Star that are responsive, but subject to a non-disclosure agreement in his employment contract. In other words, he cannot provide this responsive information unless he is compelled to do so by subpoena. In the letter, Johnson also said that Blue Star is not providing the relevant information, adding, quote, in fact, although the committee asked Blue Star twice to identify its employees and contractors who worked on the Burisma matter, it never identified Mr. Teleshenko. Because Mr. Teleshenko's records and information would be responsive to the committee's requests, and Blue Star has refused to produce them, a subpoena to Mr. Teleshenko for these records is appropriate at this time. Interesting that this update comes just after recent news that Ukraine has opened a criminal probe into Joe Biden's role in firing their former top prosecutor. Please leave a comment and tell me what you think. If you could give this video a thumbs up, click the like button. That's greatly appreciated, and make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Also, down in the video description are links to my Patreon or PayPal accounts where you can support this channel directly. Patreon.com/realityreader or paypal.me/realityreader. Thanks again, everybody that's been sharing these videos and sharing the channel with others to help get the information out there. I will follow up soon. Thank you.